rekoh joj anđele, ja vidim anđele. Mane šta ti je, daj mane šta ti. Pozdrav, dobri moji ljudi. Danas mi je ogromna čast jer mi je u gostima čuveni Bart Sibrel, čovek bez koga sve ono što mi danas zovemo teorija zavere, to bi praktično sve bilo nemoguće bez tog čoveka. Dakle, on je prvi skeptik koji je prikupio maltene hiljade podataka iz Apolo misije. I zapravo samo zahvaljujući njemu mi znamo šta se zapravo tu događa, inače bi to sve bilo prilično onako pogubljeno. Dakle, samo da vam kažem, subtitlovi, pošto će intervju biti na engleskom, imate na onom malom točkiću, tu kliknite i izaberite srpski, ja ću podesiti da što više ljudi to dobije tako već, ali ako ne vidite subtitlove, pritisnite to. Bart, I'm so glad you're here. I'm your biggest fan, so I want to thank you because I think if you didn't came up, that today a lot of people would still believe in Apolo. So thank you very much for doing that job all your life.
Well, you're welcome.
Do you feel well these days?
Yeah, not too bad considering. How about you? Gordo, is that how you say your name?
My name Goran.
Goran.
Yes, Goran.
Okay.
Goran is feeling perfect. Bart, I would like to start this interview because you're famous. Just put your hands on a Bible and swear you walk on the moon.
So why don't you just put the end to the record in the argument and put your hand on the Bible, swear to God you walked on the moon.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator at NASA?
I want to ask you, what did you see? So their eyes, their movements, how did they feel when you asked them that?
Well, some people have come up to me and said they've watched my film, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, 50 times. And then I say, well, what did you think of Astronauts Gone Wild? And they've never heard of it, which kind of shows you this shadow banning or whatever's going on the internet. How can they hear of one film of mine and not the second one, which is the sequel on the same topic? Then sometimes the opposite happens. People have heard of the film Astronauts Gone Wild, maybe because of the punch by Buzz Aldrin, but they've never heard of the original film, which to me better proves that they did indeed fake the moon landing. Of course, today with 6 decades of better technology, the best they can do is look out the window at the moon going by. I mean, people don't understand, after they put one astronaut in space for 15 minutes in 1961, 20 days later, Kennedy said, we're going to set an 8-year goal to go to the moon 1,000 times farther than the space station, land a rocket vertically, even though it took Elon Musk 5 attempts to do that with 5 decades better technology, and fly back and not kill anybody. They did it ahead of schedule within an 8-year goal. And then with 6 decades better technology, they're 8 years behind schedule just to look out the window at the moon going by, assuming they did that. So you can't have greater technology in the past and in the future. You can go to Sibrel.com, Sibrel.com, and see all this videos for free, which sadly proves they did fake the moon landing. Now, my first film, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, which is on the homepage of Sibrel.com, that I was producing under the theory it might be true that they faked it. And I was given $1 million by someone who builds rockets for NASA, who knows that the missions were fake. And we just proved it logically. You can't have greater technology in 1969 than now. Because if they could go to the moon on the first attempt with 1/1,000th the computing power of a cell phone, they would have been on Mars 10 years later. We'd be in another solar system by now. There'd be bases all over the moon. Artemis only did, assuming they left Earth orbit, which I'm becoming doubtful, they only did 1/5 of what Apollo did. I just don't understand why this is such a big deal. unless they actually never went to the moon to begin with. So in the production of that first movie, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, we found footage, and I sent you the clip. I could share it, you could share it, you could put it in post. We found footage of them faking part of the mission right in front of your eyes. They're using a 1-foot model of the Earth, pretending it's floating in space, pretending they're looking back at it. The lights come up, it's a 1-foot model. And we have a track of audio from the CIA telling them to fake a 4-second radio delay, showing that they never left Earth orbit. After that film was produced, when, you know, that footage is what convinced me they did actually fake the moon landing, I thought, well, why not just track down some of these astronauts, ask them to swear in a Bible like they do in court? That's the film you're speaking of. And the executive producer named it Astronauts Gone Wild, after a famous American movie, Girls Gone Wild, because one of them punches me, one of them threatens to shoot me, one of them kicks me from behind, and another one, when we accidentally left a wireless microphone inside his house and recorded the audio in the camera in the driveway, he's talking about calling the CIA to have me killed, which wouldn't be necessary if they really went to the moon. So what was that like behind the scenes? Well, several of the astronauts I had private conversations with, and 2 or more of them made it clear to me, I am correct, but good luck trying to convince the American people who don't want to believe it. I just posted an article at Sibrel.com, and one of the sayings in my...
Two of those astronauts said you privately you are...
That is correct. Mm-hmm. But good luck trying to convince other people. So we had somebody come forward and admit to a homicide in the military. And when he was asked, why did you kill this person? He said, well, we witnessed them film the fake moon landing at Cannon Air Force Base, June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1968. My coworker thought it was wrong, and I killed him to keep it a secret because he was going to tell the public. Odd thing to be making up as you're dying, right?
Because hopefully this video won't come out until after my death. So I have nothing to gain, nothing to profit. Project Slam Dunk was the name of this. President Johnson in 1968, okay? In Cannon Air Force Base in 1968, he said by the time he got there, that there was already 2 large hangars that were connected. There was hundreds of dump trucks that came in and dumped sand and stone, and cement powder was powdered over the top of all that to make it look like a lunar landscape.
So we have the proof of them faking, you know, halfway to the moon with the 1-foot model that 2 NBC news directors and the Washington Post agreed proves they didn't go to the moon, but were forbidden to do a story about it. We have the logic, you can't have greater technology in the past and in the future. We have a simple picture on the homepage of Sibrel.com. You can insert it. It's number 2 in the clips I sent you, where shadows are intersecting at 90 degrees from objects 5 feet apart. That, if taken in sunlight, the shadows would be parallel, which means it's electrical light, which means they're on Earth, which means they didn't go to the moon. And we have the smartest AI in the world. Just said that all of the Apollo pictures had a fake backdrop and an eyewitness. So they sadly did fake the moon landing. Meeting these astronauts, they're kind of scary in a way. My book, Moon Man, goes into the backstory of what was it like to produce these movies, including the testimony of people who asked me to wait until they died, which is in the book and not in the movie, including an interview I did with the widow of the man who was going to be the first man to walk on the moon, Gus Grissom, who told me that days before he was killed, he took a bunch of reporters to the top of the moon rocket and hung a lemon on it. And in America, a lemon means a piece of junk, like a used car that doesn't work. So he said the moon rocket was a lemon, a piece of junk. And days later, he was murdered by his own wife's opinion, not mine, by the CIA. So,
do you think that they killed him because he would go public? What do you think?
Well, he was what they called a Boy Scout. That's an American term meaning a person of such integrity, it's almost nerdish or bizarre. A Boy Scout, like someone who will write you a speeding ticket for going 61 miles per hour in a 60-mile-per-hour zone. And so he was that type of person. He had supreme integrity. He was preparing reports to give to Congress and the Senate how the Apollo program was at least 10 years behind schedule. Okay. With 6 decades better technology, they're 8 years behind schedule just to use centrifugal force or inertia to loop around the moon, which isn't even orbiting the moon, which takes considerably more fuel. So at that point, they had not yet told the astronauts. It was a year and a half before they faked it at Cannon Air Force Base. Apparently, they hadn't told the astronauts yet that that was going to be their plan. Maybe they hadn't decided that yet. So he was frustrated that they wouldn't fix any of the equipment. And he was writing his congressman, his senator. And then he was so frustrated that they wouldn't fix anything because the higher ups knew they weren't going to go. They were either going to admit it, postpone it, or fake it. And he was getting so frustrated, he held that press conference at the top of the rocket without permission. Generals from the Pentagon threatened to kill him, to where the day he died, he was under Secret Service protection. His wife told me in a 4-hour interview that is in my book, Moon Man, which you have to go to Sibrel.com to get. It's in audio that I read myself, Kindle or print. It's now in multiple languages. It's in Spanish, German, Dutch, and I think it's about to be translated into other languages. And she told me that on January 26, 1967, he telephoned her from NASA and said that for some strange reason, the CIA suddenly appeared at NASA for the first time in the 8 years he's been there, and they wanted to inspect the equipment, the spacecraft. Well, the very next day, he's dead from faulty equipment. Right after the CIA inspected it, sabotaged it, according to his wife and his son. So he was murdered by the CIA. That's their opinion, the dead man's relatives, not my opinion. And the CIA came to her home moments after he was killed, took all of his papers criticizing the Apollo program without even telling her that her husband was dead. Just burst in, took everything and left. And so when I found this footage, again, this is a 7-year, $1 million project, 3.5 years into it, I show the footage and you can edit that in, clip number 4 and clip number 3.
Roger, Houston, Apollo 11. Calling in from about 130,000 miles out.
Oh, Apollo 11, Houston, Goldstone says that the TV looks great. Over. Okay, Roger.
I was followed from church. I was abducted. I was drugged. I escaped. And all of this adventures are in the book, not in the movie. One of the things I point out in the book is there's this consumer advocate by the name of Ralph Nader. And he's actually passed more important legislation than 20 presidents, one of which is called the Freedom of Information Act law. And back in his day, around the time of the Apollo program, he found out that General Motors knew that they could save like 10,000 lives a year if they put airbags in cars, but they didn't want to spend the $200. They wanted to make an extra $200 per car, and that would kill 10,000 people. So what? So he wrote a book called Unsafe at Any Speed, and he said people are following him. People are trying to entrap him with drugs and prostitutes, all of which was simply to save $200 per car. Imagine the interference someone would get who has proof on videotape that they faked the moon landing, if you can imagine. Even the son of the man who confessed to killing somebody to cover up the fraud, which was filmed at Cannon Air Force Base in June of '68, his son was threatened with death just 3 years ago for talking to me. This would be a great embarrassment. So even though I had these kind of CIA encounters, life-threatening encounters. As I mentioned in my book, there were good guys in the government, another faction, who were protecting me, who I've seen face to face. And that's apparently going on as well. But I do remember a moment right when Astronauts Gone Wild had come out, and a person in the military told me that the deep state, or whatever you want to call it, is more mad at that movie than the original one because they're making their people look bad. They have no idea that what the Van Allen radiation belt is. They say they never went through it, which happens to be true. And all sorts of things we caught them saying accidentally on camera. So I'm eating my oatmeal one morning. I think it's the 35th anniversary. This is after the punch in the production of that movie. And the 3 Apollo astronauts are on the lawn of the White House, the seat of authority on planet Earth. And I'm sitting there watching it, eating my oatmeal. And one of the guys, the reporters interviewing them by satellite, like we're talking, and says, I'm glad, Buzz, I'm not here in the same room with you. Otherwise, I might get punched. Of course, he's, talking about me. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, and they're talking about me on the lawn of the White House of the most corrupt and powerful nation on earth. And I am the one rocking their boat.
I bet you they did speak about you. Exactly about you.
Well, yeah. And there are good people in the government who know I'm right. And some of them are still afraid to tell the truth because the truth is so embarrassing. I mean, if Trump admitted on national TV, look, they actually didn't go to the moon, while that is an embarrassment, it's actually the most powerful weapon to end corruption, to show the public this is how bad it has become. And now people are afraid of the truth, I believe, because there's a tremendous lack of belief in God and a judgment to come like there used to be. But when I watch, I sat down, you probably saw it, across the table from one of these lying Apollo astronauts. And I specifically asked him to be the person sitting across from me, Charles Duke, because he's the only one who has the audacity to claim to be a Christian. Now, I do my best to be a Christian, and I'm sure I fail more than I succeed. But I've read the Bible many times from cover to cover. I'm very devout in my own, inept way. And because he did fake the moon landing, he is a liar. And according to lawyers, he's legally liable for those homicides. It's called felony homicide. If you participate in a crime in which other people are killed, you're liable. You can even get the death penalty for that. Then you see his face, and he's got a smirk on his face. He thinks that if you stamp the Used Car Association of America on a used car, that suddenly means it's not a piece of junk or a lemon. So he stamps, I'm a Christian, therefore you must believe me when I say we walked on the moon. And the guy, you're the first person I'm telling this to. The guy sent me an email, a month or two ago. One of the Apollo astronauts contacted me, And I don't scare easy. And even if I do, I'll probably do what I'm afraid of anyway, just because I'm afraid of it, because I hate being a coward. But it scares me. I mean, this guy could make a phone call and I wouldn't be here tomorrow. Easily. That could be done. I think they have a little bit of respect for my passion, my zeal, my ability to uncover as much as I have. And maybe they like the competition. Maybe they like monitoring my communications so that whistleblowers who come to me, like the deathbed confession, they'll know about it in advance and things like that. I don't know. But the overall, and this is what a 20-minute answer to your question, is what is it like to be sitting across from these guys? It's like sitting across from, a lion that's not tied up and not in a cage and 1 foot away from you. These people are the pinnacle of Luciferian, murderous corruption in the federal government. I wrote an article. Please go to Sibrel.com and read this article about how Artemis proves the Apollo fraud. If all that they can do with 6 decades better technology is look out the window at the moon going by, that proves they never went to the moon in 1969 on the first attempt, with 6 decades older technology. So the Artemis success actually proves the Apollo fraud when they're trying to say, you know, it's the opposite. No, it proves it. And to sit across the table from this guy and to get emails from this guy, and I'm tempted to continue communication with him, but I'm not going to because I'm flirting with death if I do. That's what it's like. I mean, if you can imagine, have you ever seen a cobra up close? You know, and you can, if you're really careful, you can back away from it and it'll let you back away from it. You got to do it really slow and really careful. And that's what it's like. It's almost dreamlike to realize that there are people who can somehow go about their lives being a complete lie, be complicit to homicides, can be the greatest traitors of America since Benedict Arnold, and yet they're treated as heroes. And they get first-class tickets, and everyone shakes their hand and wants their autograph. How pathetic is that?
Yeah,
that
I
our
understand,
American
and
heroes are a bunch of traitors.
I can only imagine your life with so many people on a high level, and you talk the opposite. Antarctica stones. When I saw that, oh my God, there are moon rocks in Antarctica. That blew my mind completely.
It has to do with the age of the Earth, the direction of the tilt of the Earth at the time of lunar meteorites, plus the fact that it only snows about 2 inches a year, and meteorites kind of stick out, we say in America, like a sore thumb. They're big black rock in the middle of white. They're kind of easy to spot, and there's something potentially about the direction of the South Pole relative to the asteroid strike that makes them even more abundant. The fact is, you know, what's his name? Charles Duke went over, said a million times, the proof that we went to the moon is the moon rocks. Well, all you got to do is go to Sibrel.com, read the article about Artemis. There's a link where Neil Armstrong claims he personally picked up a rock, personally put it in his pocket, and gave it to the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, who put it in a hermetically sealed box. Then my film comes out. It's controversial. The museum creator gets curious. He opens the box, puts it under a microscope, and it's a piece of petrified wood. So unless there are trees growing on the moon, it's this, you know, intentionally odd looking, out of this world looking fake. So it makes a little bit of the internet news. Moon rock proves to be fake. NASA says no comment. Okay, so if the moon rocks are fake, what about the moon missions? Does anyone want to ask that? And I ask a reporter from major newspapers, why aren't you asking that question? And they say, if I did, I would be fired. I thought we had a free press, right? The CIA is legally forbidden to assassinate people in other countries, and yet they boast about it in TV and newspaper interviews. And newspapers are so controlled, remember, Central Intelligence Information Agency, that some independent press watchdog did a survey of 1,500 news outlets, that's quite a few, about whether or not Chavez should be assassinated by the CIA, and all 1,500 said it was a great idea. What are the odds of that? Unless they're all centrally controlled. And then one of my clips at Sibrel.com for Moon Man are these TV news stories. And if you check the bottom left and right-hand corner, you'll see a logo for CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox. And all of the stations are saying the same story word for word. That's not independent press coverage, is it? So that's one of the problems we have, is that we can't get at the truth because that was supposed to be the media's job. And that has been completely taken over with deregulation. It used to be you could only own 2 TV or radio stations. Now you can own as many as you want. It used to be something called the Monroe Doctrine, that if you presented an idea like the moon landings are real, you had to have a counter view opposing it. Maybe about whether a medicine is good for you, or maybe whether or not Artemis really left Earth orbit. You'd always have to have the counter view as fairness, but they repealed that. Then they had a law that was passed around 1958 after the quiz show scandal, where Time magazine had on their cover a heading that said the smartest man in America, and a picture of a guy who kept winning the game show because he got the answers in advance. So Time magazine was wrong. You see, they had men on the moon on the cover too. They're wrong. They're deceived. So they passed a law saying you cannot use television to deceive people. Well, what was the moon landing? Using television to deceive people. So that law was actually repealed a couple of years ago. So now it's legally permissible for the government to deceive their own people. I mean, this is so outrageous. What people don't realize, you do, of course, and I'll say it again, the faking of the moon landing is so much more important historically than if they had actually gone. It's so much deeper. Historically, it has so much more meaning that the most powerful nation on earth is run by gangsters and people who are so juvenile, they won't even admit they set a goal they couldn't do, and they murder people to cover it up. That is more significant than if they'd actually gone. That is the truth that's being withheld from people, and that is like a cure for cancer. We can't progress as a nation or as a species on Earth if they still claim and still deceive people about the moon landing. And I'm surprised that this guy will go out on national TV, claim that he's a Christian, right? And lie through his teeth with a smirk on his face, thinking he's clever, that he's deceiving people about the moon landing. That's the world we live in.
My background is in music production, and I'm professional audio engineering. So everyone focuses on the visuals, but I want to talk about acoustics. What is very strange? So we hear the astronauts' voice is perfectly clear.
1201, roger, 1201 alarm. Where go, same tide, where go? Altitude, velocity, light, 8.5 down, 220 feet, 13 forward, 11 forward, coming down nicely, 200 feet, 4.5 down, 5.5 down, 60 seconds, lights on.
How can audio be so clear when under your ass is big motor? I don't get it. That's not possible.
Well, it's because they were doing the audio live from Earth orbit. So they were orbiting the Earth with no engines running. And that's where the live audio of them claiming they were reading a script. We're, 100 feet above the moon. We're 75 feet above the moon. We're 50 feet above the moon. All the while, the engine is allegedly running in the background. Astronauts Gone Wild contains an interview where one guy says, oh, yeah, the engine was loud. Another guy in the same spacecraft on a different mission says, oh, it was silent because of the vacuum of space, which is their catch-all excuse when things don't make sense. They never left Earth orbit, and they're reading a radio script. That's why there's no engine noise in the background, because there is no engine noise in the background. They are not landing on the moon. They're pretending to land on the moon. There were no live pictures. People don't realize it. It was this little Atari graphic, and it said right there on the screen, simulation of them landing on the moon.
Great question, Bart. Someone from NASA gave you $1 million. So this is, I'm sure, group of people.
Yeah, there are people, and I'm sure the Artemis, it appears that the Artemis astronauts did not leave Earth orbit. Sad to say. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I assume maybe they're really going to try. But there's no live video going past the astronauts to a window with the moon large slowly going by. Not a single clip. Not one video clip going past the astronauts to the window with the moon outside large slowly going by. Only still images that have been repeated, and only as of 1 day ago, an alleged video image from the window, but there's nothing before it or after it that can prove that it's actually the window of the spacecraft. It just comes on and they claim it's the window looking out, but there's no, backing up and showing the cabin. Why not? Because it looks like they faked it. One of the clips of my book is, as you know, an engineer from NASA saying there's a deadly radiation field between the Earth and the moon. And at the time that he said it in 2014, the technology to go through it and survive had not been invented yet. So the astronauts would have to go through that radiation. And when asked, what improvements have you made? They said, well, we're using our clothing and our food between the walls and us to protect us from radiation. I'm not sure that would really work, seeing how a dental x-ray is only 1/5000th as strong and lasts for 1/24th of a second instead of 4 hours. And my dentist wears a lead vest for that 24th of a second with 1/5000th as strong of radiation. So I don't think that would work, and I suspect that's why they don't have any actual footage proving they left Earth orbit. They already faked leaving Earth orbit 9 times. Okay, so I guess to do it one more time is no big deal. They had to leave Earth orbit. If they could not leave Earth orbit with people, it would prove they didn't go to the moon. They're 8 years behind schedule. And you understand? One astronaut in space, 1/1,000,000th the computing power of a cell phone, never been done before. They were ahead of schedule on an 8-year goal to land on another world, drive cars, play golf. And with 60 years better technology, they're 8 years behind schedule just to loop around the moon and look out the window at it. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but some people just can't feel that simple logic as you speak now.
Well, yeah, because they've made a
can't
god
see.
out of it. An alleged, professor said, I'm ignoring science when they're the ones ignoring science. Science says to validate a breakthrough in technology like splitting the atom, breaking the sound barrier, flying across the Atlantic in an airplane, in order to prove that it is real, it has to be independently duplicated. No one has in 57 years been able to independently duplicate the 1969 moon landing, only during the Nixon administration and only for that short window. They've never been able to do it. So scientific proof is that they did not go. You cannot have shadows intersecting at 90 degrees from objects 5 feet apart and claim that it's sunlight. That's impossible. It's mathematically and scientifically impossible. You can insert, picture number 2 over this discourse. We have proof right in front of your eyes. And then you can show clip 3 and 4 of them faking being halfway to the moon with a 1-foot model of the Earth, proving they didn't go to the moon. And then you have a testimony of someone who was there saying they didn't go to the moon because they filmed it at his Air Force base.
When Dad saw the moon landing on TV, he cried. He said he knew that what he had witnessed on TV was exactly what they recorded in that hangar.
And then you have the logic that you can't have greater technology in 1969 than today. Today, they can only do 1/5 of what Apollo did, even though they have 60 years better technology. So why is that? It's because the original claim was false. It was a bluff. No one has duplicated it. And even though you have this evidence right in front of your eyes, people even admit the footage I uncovered of them faking being halfway to the moon is them faking being halfway to the moon. But they still went anyway. And I've said it before, college professors have told me plainly, if an Apollo astronaut tearfully confessed on national TV that the moon missions were fake, he would still think he walked on the moon anyway. Now that is making a god. Yeah. It's amazing. I'm accused of being unscientific when it's those people who are being unscientific. They have made a god out of the moon landing. If you don't believe in God, maybe science is your god. The god of science is putting a man on the moon. How dare you blaspheme putting a man on the moon?
Exactly.
What about the smartest AI? The smartest AI just said all the moon pictures were fake. That's why they've suppressed that story tremendously. When that news story came out, not a single major news story covered it. They covered the president getting a new cat, but not the fact that the smartest AI in the world compared pictures of the lunar surface from unmanned Chinese probes, and it said the foreground and the background were continuous infinitely. And they compared them to the Apollo pictures, and it said they suddenly stop. The pixels don't line up. It's a fake backdrop.
Which brings us to another question. I watched your interview, I don't know the channel, but you with that last survived astronaut.
What's the point of this discussion? We did not go to the moon.
You're just digging your hole deeper every time you say that, General.
And I got the feeling that that old man speaks the truth from inside. And I know that you are right. They couldn't go to the moon. Did you ever think about that those people were just pioneers in MK Ultra mind program?
Yeah, I think the problem is, no offense, you're being deceived by a really good liar. My background is theater. I've been on stage over 500 times. I've taught acting. Acting is how to pretend emotionally that what you're experiencing is real when it's a complete lie. And I can tell you that these people are lying intentionally. Further proof of it is the fact that prior to that interview, the guy walks up to me and says, I remember you called me 20 years ago and said this, and this. So the guy's got a pretty good memory. And then he was also told 10 times in advance by the host that he was going to debate somebody who thinks we didn't go to the moon. He reminded me that that's who he knew I was. And then as soon as the cameras were rolling, he acted like he had no idea that I believe we didn't go to the moon. So that's intentionally lying, isn't it? So if he's intentionally lying then he's intentionally lying about the moon landing. They've been trained to lie, to visualize. I'm sure they considered hypnotizing them. I'm sure they considered that, but it's not reliable. If you know anything about hypnosis, it's highly unstable and unreliable. Sirhan is probably the closest example of it, and he didn't even follow or fire the fatal shot. He probably fired a gun in the air, and that's all that he did. And he was hypnotized to that degree, but he couldn't even fire the fatal shot under hypnosis because he was out of his mind. You see? So they want expert liars, and that's why these people are so frightening. They're snakes who are intentionally lying. One of the things I point out in the book is this account I saw in the news about 20 years ago where this young couple is getting married. And the guy, ever since he was like an 8-year-old, has this boa constrictor snake that he probably bought. It was 1.5 feet long, then 3 feet, then 4 feet, then high school, 6 feet. Then by the time he's getting married, it's 8 feet long, and almost 1 foot in diameter around. I'm sure his wife isn't thrilled about bringing that along, but he's had the snake, for 15 years. She doesn't want to force him, to give it up. So there's a picture of them married, sitting together on the couch with the snake, on their lap, and their little baby, sitting on top, patting the snake's head. And then about 6 months later, 6 months later, they come home and they find their baby's leg down the throat of the snake. It's impossible for a snake to have compassion. It can get used to people handling it. A tarantula can get used to people handling it, and a snake or a lizard can get used to people handling it. But if I jump off a roof and flap my arms, I guarantee you I will not be aerodynamic. And I guarantee you it's impossible for a snake to have compassion. And proof of it is there. The snake knew this guy for 15 years. The snake knew it was his baby. And the snake acted normal when he was in front of people. But the moment he was out of sight, he tried to eat the child of his owner. That's how these Apollo astronauts are. The Bible warns about this. I think in the book of Hebrews, it says their consciences have been seared as with a hot iron, and they are no longer capable of repenting. You look at a still frame. I know Jesus says the eyes are the key to the soul, and I'm sure that's true. I just don't understand it. If you want to know whether someone's lying or not, look at their mouth. I remember Obama was asked a really simple question. It was like a week before the Super Bowl. Where are you going to watch the Super Bowl? And he goes, well, we haven't decided yet. Of course they've decided. They decided 6 months or a year ago where he was going to watch the Super Bowl. He lied. He should have just said, for security reasons, we're not going to tell you. Look at the mouth on the freeze frame after these guys. A snake can look you right in the eye and lie right to you, but they're proud of themselves when they get away with it. And they got a little smirk on their face. And there's multiple freeze frames of that little smirk on that guy's face throughout that 3.5-hour interview. He's lying. He knows exactly what he's doing. And that's why it's a frightening thing to get an unprompted email from one of these guys. You know, they're scary. They're scary people. And I pray for them. I fasted for them. And I don't know what to say. One of them.
How do you live how do you live with that pressure? How?
Well, it's not exactly pressure. It's just that, you know, when you drive, sometimes there are gutters or guardrails on the side of the road when there's a cliff, and then sometimes there aren't any. You're just really careful. And so you're mindful. And so I try to be mindful as I go about my day. I've obviously had divine protection when I can escape the clutches of the CIA, who drugged me with truth serum to get me to tell them where the original footage was of the fake, you know, mock Earth that they created. And I told them everything they wanted to know. I even, after I escaped their custody, I peed in a cup and I thought I got them. You know, I've got proof in my urine that I was drugged by this exotic truth serum or whatever the heck it was. So I have a friend put it in a lab in his name, thinking I can outwit the CIA. And when I check back with him in about a week, he says, well, there was a problem at the lab. And I'm like, well, what problem? He says, well, they had a break-in over the weekend. And I'm like, so? He says, well, funny thing, the only thing stolen was your urine sample. And so, you know, I've met good guys in the government who are looking out for me, and God is looking out for me, and I'm in the right. And it doesn't really matter if I get killed. You see, most people don't know this, but I was asked to do this film by Bill Casey back in the late 80s. And I didn't finish the film until 2001, minus 7 years. I started in 1994. So in the late 80s, 88, 89, I was asked to make this movie. And I thought about it. I spent 6 months deciding whether to make this movie or not. And my answer was no. Because with the shadows intersecting, the Soviets being more advanced, 2 of the 3 astronauts got not given an interview, the administrator resigning, and the astronaut deaths. And I'm like, something doesn't look right. Do I really want to risk my life for what Nixon did? And I thought, no, I don't think so. I want to have a wife and family. So I turned it down. Then I started reading a 1-year Bible. June 3rd, 1989. It was the day the man stood in front of the tanks in China. And June 3rd, 1990, I had read the Bible 1 time. And by 1994, I had read the Bible 5 times from cover to cover. I wasn't a Christian, but I did believe in God. Things don't make themselves. Just because we can't comprehend it doesn't mean it's not true. My dog can't comprehend the engine, but it doesn't mean it wasn't designed. And that's what arrogant evolutionary people say. See, they think they're following science, but just like people who refuse to accept that the moon landing, even though it can't be duplicated, even though shadows intersecting at 90 degrees, evolution says that a lower form of life made a higher form of life. So how can something without a brain make a brain? You see, it's actually the exact opposite of logic. But in any case, so I realized there is a judgment. The Bible says that God puts eternity on the hearts of men. and that they can tell from nature that there's a creator. Think about a flower and a bee. My favorite word, symbiosis. A flower can't live without a bee, and a bee can't live without a flower. So how could they evolve separately? They had to be made with the knowledge of each one by a higher power, whether we understand it or not. So it seems instinctual that there is a judgment to come. You can look around at a world full of rape and murder and molestation and thievery, that there is a battle between good and evil. And seeing how faking or putting a man on the moon would be mankind's greatest accomplishment, its Tower of Babel, right, which was never finished. It seemed to me that this is important. This is important to find out, because if they faked the moon landing, and now I know, sadly, they did, that's so important for mankind to know. We cannot learn, we cannot go forward if we're being taught this lie. Imagine being a 35-year-old and saying, I've got to go to bed on Christmas Eve before 8 o'clock or Santa won't come. Is that really healthy for a 35-year-old to believe in Santa? Is it really healthy to live in a world where the government deceives their own people and murders them to cover it up about their greatest accomplishment, which actually never happened? Is that a kind of world that is productive and safe for everybody? These people are at large. So I changed my mind. I said, I am willing to die for this. And who knew I would actually be risking my life? And so it doesn't matter if I get killed. They did fake the moon landing. I am in the right. And it is worth dying for, because it's important for people to know this truth. Otherwise, the gangsters are still at large, and they will kill and lie and embezzle to even a greater degree.
Pretty sure that many people in CIA are with you, and that's the only reason you're alive.
And divine protection.
Yeah, but some of the best proof for me, undeniably, is that son, Eugene Aker, who gave you interview while he was dying. I think that no man can lie day before he dies. That's unimaginably for me.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to be making up as you're dying. Let's just say you're dying and you want to play a joke on somebody. It's such a bizarre thing to want to make up. And I guess I haven't heard the official debunking of that video, but I guess that's what they must be saying. Oh, he was just kidding that he killed somebody on these exact dates. He stood beside President Johnson, who gave him a list of 15 people who were allowed into the fake lunar set at Cannon Air Force Base. We published that list in the book. Some of those people wrote in their own memoirs that they were at the base at that time. I don't know what to say. People are in denial.
Have you ever think about that? Why Van Allen would be there at that site?
Why who?
Van Allen.
Well, I guess he was the one who multiple times said on camera and in writing that they cannot leave Earth orbit because of radiation between the Earth and the moon, which is lethal. So he had to be in on it. And I guess he's in that circle. And so they included him, I guess, to gain his secrecy, because he could have spilled the beans. He could have started doing national talk shows and say, look, they can't go to the moon. I don't know how they did it unless they faked it. So they brought him on board and had him swear to a National Security Agency oath. And according to Cyrus Eugene Akers, who he took that oath, and part of it was not only would they kill him if he told the secret about the moon landing fraud, they would kill his family. And that's what happened to the son. The son told me, after he told me this information, the CIA visited his house and threatened to kill him and his family if he ever talked to me again about his father being there when they faked the moon landing at Cannon Air Force Base, June 1st through 3rd, 1968. So the White House investigated this. This is about 4 years ago. The United States Senate Intelligence Committee investigated it, and the FBI gave the son whistleblower protection, all of which wouldn't be necessary if they really went to the moon. But they're also not telling the public about it for fear it's too embarrassing. So, and people in the government, there's a congresswoman, her last name is Luna, Moon, and she wants to, have the truth come out about 9/11 and who shot JFK and RFK, but not mentioning the moon landings that are obviously fake. I sent her my book. I'm sure she has it. Elon Musk knows, but he doesn't want to bite the hand that feeds him. Can't blame him. I might do the same thing. I don't know. But at some point, we have to realize we're going to die. And I think it was called the Boston Massacre. I think that was May 5th, 1770, when 5 people, just 5, got killed by the British. And it might have been just as much the Americans' fault, but they said, that's it. That's all the tyranny we're going to put up with. That's it. That was before federal income tax. That was just taxing a penny or a tenth of a penny on a tea bag. They said that's too much. They were willing to die for what is right. Now we have John F. Kennedy's own relatives saying he was murdered by the CIA. They're 100% certain. No one does anything about it, right? And then we have Robert McNamara, defense secretary, saying the public was against the Vietnam War. So we created a little Pearl Harbor incident to get them motivated. And that attack by the North Vietnamese on an American ship actually never happened. But Congress passed a law based on a CIA fabrication. So who are they representing? The people or the CIA who were lying to them? That led to the death of 3 million people. 58,220 were their own citizens. They're willing to kill their own citizens, willing to kill their own president. They're not going to have a problem faking a TV image, right? But it's a positive lie. How glorious our team won the world championship. How dare you say they cheated? Don't you want to know if your spouse is cheating on you, even though she's a deaconess in the church and donates to charity and donates blood? Don't you want to know if she's actually got a boyfriend or not? And our leaders have a boyfriend, and it looks like it's Lucifer, because that's the name of Lucifer in Revelation 9:11, Apollo. And they worship these Greek gods. They put 666 in their symbolism, and these are the people running the show. Anyone genuine tries to come to the top of the leadership, they beat them back down, kill them, or the people just bow out, not wanting to have anything to do with it.
I have long think about that. Why would they put a hold that idea? And I thought about, because they took the Nazis and they thought the Nazis are evil. They killed many people. So now we're going to tell you what you bad people going to do for us good people, because if they didn't do that Apollo did Nazis, so they think that they are clear before God.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few people who admit that they worship Lucifer, somehow thinking that a created being can give them eternal life or protect them from eternal condemnation, which, is betting on the wrong horse. I don't know. We have the moon landing was supervised by a Nazi who, according to the United States State Department, had he lived another 2 years, he would have spent the rest of his life in prison for war crimes during World War II. He is the one who faked the moon landing. Putin said a few years ago that the Nazis did not lose World War II. They infiltrated the United States government, and the United States government invited them over, gave them amnesty, gave them high-paying jobs, did not hang them like many of them deserved. And these people and their ideology took over the government. You have the World Economic Forum, whatever that is. They boast on national TV. They appoint presidents of other countries, one of which is Canada, Trudeau. And he was asked, what's your favorite country? Oh, I really like China, because they can pass laws as a dictatorship immediately. They don't have to debate. They don't have to get the public's approval. Boy, I wish we were like that. That's what the guy said out of his own mouth. Gee whiz. I don't know what to say. This is the world that we live in. They think it's funny that they fake moon landings and we cheer our own traitors, but I don't know. The Bible says there are people who have eyes that do not see and ears that do not hear. And Jesus says he was sent to Israel, to the church, and to them he said, most of you are not saved. Wide is the gate to destruction. Most go that way. Narrow is the way to life, and only a few find it. Just to get here, just to have this conversation, our beloved Father had an ejaculation of 150 million sperm. And how many got here? Just one. Is God ruthless? Is God uncompassionate? What about the 149,999,999 that God threw away? They wanted to be here. Only one made it. The Bible says, I think in Nehemiah, that sin will not rise a second time in the new heaven and the new earth. God is not going to give eternal life to wicked people. Imagine how narrow the way is to get to live forever. Because if we don't live forever, everything is a complete waste of time. What good is it to gain the whole world and forfeit your soul? The evil people got the world. They killed Kennedy. They faked the moon landing. They did 9/11. They did whatever that thing was for the last 3 years or so. And who knows what they're planning on doing next. And they'll probably succeed, but they won't get eternal life. So repent, read your Bible, love your enemy. That's the key to salvation. And we'll be on the other side, and they won't, and we won't have to deal with them ever again. Praise be to God.
Bart, thank you very much for this interview. I wish you all the best, that guarding angels save you, and to research more. Thank you for all your work.
Sure, no problem. Godspeed to you. Feel free to send me a clip, and with your permission, I might share it on my YouTube channel at some point.
Of course. Ok. Eto, dobri moji ljudi, nadam se da ste uživali u ovom intervjuu. Vidimo se u sljedećem. Pozdrav svima.